Good afternoon, 4:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Margot Cleveland from the Federalist is here at 4:30, and then Tony Schaefer joins us at 5 o'clock. We'll get his reaction to all of the chaotic incoming news about who's to blame for President Trump being shot Saturday. Lots of finger-pointing going on. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We'll get back to Secret Service stuff soon, but first, the Democrats are now working feverishly to eject all of their political liabilities. They're like, let's get rid of that guy and that guy. That's a problem. Let's get rid of him. Let's throw him overboard. So this week they're trying to, let's start with Bob Menendez. We'll start with the smaller one first. Bob Menendez, who was found guilty this week of being a foreign agent. He's longtime head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. This is a massive story. The head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, it turns out, has been a foreign agent. Now, this will come as not in any way a shock to you, that it turns out that Bob Menendez is one of the single most corrupt people to have ever worked in Washington. And that's a pretty low bar to achieve. And he's done it. He keeps ending up in court with corruption scheme after corruption scheme. He's got all these, rich donors that are bankrolling his lavish lifestyle, his trips to the Dominican Republic, and his exchanges with, allegedly, with hookers who may or may not be underage. We don't know. Although the FBI did back in the day when those allegations popped up, the FBI did find corroborating evidence for that claim. It sure looks like Menendez was engaging in some hanky panky with the ladies down in the DR, but like so many stories with Democrats, that one just drifted away. It drifted away and never to be heard of again. And here we have Menendez this week found guilty of being a foreign agent and accepting all sorts of ridiculous, over-the-top bribes, vehicles, gold bars. Isn't that great? If you're going to commit a crime, you have to do it in the most cartoonish possible way. You have to accept literal gold bars. Gold bar Bob. So Menendez busted this week. He swears, "Oh, I'm still innocent. I'm innocent," he says. We're going to appeal this. It's totally fine. And he said yesterday that if this can happen to him, this can happen to any U.S. senator. Which, well, if he's telling the truth, then that tells you a lot about people who are in the United States Senate, doesn't it? And if he's lying to you, well, it's hilarious. Anybody could be found guilty of taking gold bars in exchange for doing the bidding of foreign entities and heading the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. You know who else was in charge of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee? Any guesses off the top of your head? That's right. Joe Biden was once the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Good thing he's never had any scandals implicating that he was bought and paid for by foreign countries. No prosecution for Joe. He's too senile. That's what Robert Hur said. Although we can't hear the audio. We just get the transcript of that one. Over on MSNBC, Menendez's fellow senator from New Jersey, Democrat, Cory Booker, had this to say.
Yeah, remember, Bob is a figure that most New Jerseyans know. He's been in the state working in public life for decades. And so for New Jersey, this is a painful day of real heartbreak and, frankly...
It's a shock. Who knew? Who knew Menendez was corrupt? We had no idea. There was an organization that used to be nonpartisan until the left took it over. It was called the Center for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. CREW, you may know it. The Media Matters stooges took it over a while ago now. But back in the day, before that takeover, guess who they considered to be one of the most corrupt senators in all of Washington? That's right. Your boy, Bob Menendez. Menendez was considered. After the Media Matters people took it over, they got rid of that distinction. No longer did they consider Menendez Mr. Corrupt.
Just deep disappointment. A jury that was sworn to objectivity, a jury of his peers, found by the highest criminal standard beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty on all 16 charges. And so, yes, he must stand up now and leave the Senate. He must do that. And if he refuses to do that, many of us, and I will lead that effort to make sure that he's removed from the Senate.
Meaning that you would lead an effort to expel him from the Senate if he refuses to resign?
Absolutely. That is the right thing to do. It is the just thing to do.
Yeah. So Chuck Schumer's telling him to go. Phil Murphy, the governor, the Democrat governor of New Jersey, resign or be expelled. Menendez, now persona non grata. His particular form of corruption, not welcome in the Democrat Party. Although this is once again a safe seat for Democrats. It's not like this Senate seat would be up for grabs. If this was in a purple state, you would not hear this. It's a blue seat. They're going to get another Democrat there. Well, the way things are going right now with Trump, actually, it's kind of a jump ball what would happen going forward. Is, we see reports that Trump is putting New York in play. But we'll just tap the brakes on the optimism around that. This is a blue seat. This is why they were so comfortable ejecting Al Franken in the first place. Remember that? Getting rid of Al Franken. When they got rid of him, they were like, "Oh, there's no problem. This is easy. We'll get this one right back." So they got rid of him, and also they got rid of him because what was the name of that guy down in Alabama? There was a Republican candidate who was receiving all sorts of garbage at the time, and they were trying to accuse him of sexual misconduct. Let me see. Alabama, what was it? Roy something, right? Roy Moore. That's right, Roy Moore. So that was in the midst of the allegations they were making against Roy Moore. And unfortunately for the narrative, the Al Franken allegations started popping up, and you get the pictures of Al Franken doing hover hands over that lady's chest on an airplane. Remember all of that? And they said, Al Franken has to go. So they ejected him, again, in a safe situation. So same things happen with Bob Menendez. Meanwhile, they're also trying to eject Joe Biden. Now, it is not hard to see why. Let's begin with the Associated Press poll this morning. Nearly 2/3 of, I didn't say Americans, in fact, I didn't say anything yet, actually, but nearly 2/3 of Democrats say that President Joe Biden should withdraw from the presidential race and let his party nominate a different candidate. According to a new poll, sharply undercutting his post-debate claim that average Democrats are still with him, even if some, quote, big names are turning on him. The new survey by the AP Nork Center for Public Affairs Research, conducted as Biden works to salvage his candidacy 2 weeks after his debate flop, also found that only about 3 in 10 Democrats are extremely or very confident that he has the mental capability. 3 in 10? This is practically his approval rating nationwide. Just 3 in 10 Democrats think that he has the mental capability to serve as president of the United States. This is their nominee. Well, not yet. Not yet. More about that in a moment. That's down slightly from 40% in a similar poll done in February. The findings underscore the challenges for the 81-year-old president as he tries to silence calls from within his own party to leave the race. Yeah, they want him to go. In fact, I played some audio for you yesterday of Joe Biden. Biden was talking with NBC. He was talking with Lester Holt this week. And Lester Holt said, if you have another one of these episodes, like you had at the debate, well, what are you going to do? What's going to happen then? What happens if your mind fails you in public again?
If you were to continue to run and be officially nominated, what happens if you have another episode like we saw during the debate?
What happens if another?
Yeah, what happens if you have another performance on that level?
I don't plan on having another performance on that level.
Sir, you're having one right now. I don't know how to tell you this. It's happening literally as we speak. Well, speaking of medical conditions, Biden has done yet another interview to try and convince everyone that he's of sound mind. He did a BET interview this week, which stands for Black Entertainment Television. And in that interview, he is now offering a predicate whereby he might drop out of the race.
If there is some medical condition that emerged, if the doctors came to me and said, you got this problem, that problem, but I made a serious mistake in the whole debate.
So if a medical condition emerges, if I'm told I have this problem or that problem, now, obviously Biden does have medical issues, so he doesn't have to make one up. But he has indicated in the past that should circumstances call for it, he's perfectly willing to lie to you about his health in order to allow Kamala Harris to become president. Do you remember this? This was December of 2020.
And I told Barack, if I reach something where there's a fundamental disagreement we have based on a moral principle, I'll develop some disease and say I have to resign.
I'll develop some disease and say I'll have to resign. He telegraphed his lie ahead of time. That was courteous of him. Usually he just lies to our faces and doesn't warn us in advance. So here he was back in December of 2020 saying, if necessary, I will lie to the American people and we'll make Kamala president. So, that card is still out there. That's on the table. That's on the table. Okay, so in the BET interview, Biden says, okay, a medical condition could be the reason he gets out of the race. Also, remember back to his NATO press briefing, which was also a disaster. Slightly less disastrous, just enough for Democrats to think, oh, the old boy still got it. He can still talk in public. During that briefing, he did indicate that if the pollsters come to him, his own people come to him and say, there's no way you're going to win this race. Well, then, under that circumstance, he might have to drop out.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Every poll says that. All of the polls say that. Weirdo. Joe Biden says, yeah, if they tell me there's no way I can win. Or if I've developed a medical condition. Have you noticed he's starting to offer all sorts of explanations for why he might drop out of the race? That seems like a list. Those seem like things. And those, by the way, are also the most plausible explanations. My brain doesn't work. Okay. See you later. That was the reason we couldn't charge him. Remember, Robert Hur said his brain doesn't work, so he can't be indicted. So presumably one would reasonably think that that could also be an explanation for why he would leave the presidency. My brain doesn't work. Or he's been told he has no chance of winning. We'll see if it's some combination of the two. But it looks like we're heading more and more towards the fact that they're going to eject him. Evidence for this. Here we go. The DNC, the Democrat Convention, has suddenly had its virtual delegate vote, shoved backwards, meaning it's further away now. They were hoping to do this thing on July 21st. I believe that's Sunday. What are we, Wednesday now? 18 is Thursday, 19. Yeah, the 21st. It would have been Sunday. They would have done a virtual vote and confirmed Joe Biden as their nominee. The whole reason they had this virtual vote thing in mind originally was because they needed to do it to satisfy Ohio's ballot requirements. So they would do that ahead of the actual in-person convention in Chicago. Now, the Democrats have decided to kick the can a bit. They don't want to take the vote Sunday. In fact, the message that CBS News obtained is that no voting will now begin before August 1st. So now that's another 9 days out from the 21st. So things are moving on more and more and more, being pushed back. And this is quite obviously to allow Democrats time, insofar as any of this can be done in an orderly fashion, to eject Joe. Biden loyalists have been urging the Democrats to quickly give it to Joe, but those numbers are dwindling. In fact, today, Adam Schiff has come out, old pencil neck himself, has come out in opposition to Joe Biden staying in the race. The reason for that is quite obvious. He lives in a state where everybody's a Democrat practically, and he's trying to become senator from California. That's his plan. That's his ambition. His entire base, as you just heard from the AP report, wants Joe Biden out. Nearly 2/3 of Democrats say Biden has to go. He should withdraw from the presidential race. So Adam Schiff has decided to give Joe Biden the shiv here and say, you need to drop out of the race. The New York Times today, Representative Adam Schiff of California said Wednesday President Biden should end his campaign, restarting a drip of opposition within the Democrat Party. It's not a drip. It's a gusher at this point, but so many of them, I can't believe I'm about to say this, so many of them are too cowardly to say it in public. Adam Schiff had the courage to look out for his own hide. I guess that's the explanation here. Mr. Biden has been one of the most consequential presidents in our nation's history, Schiff lied, and his lifetime of service as a senator, a vice president, and now as president has made our country better, Schiff lied again. He's running for Senate. He said all of this in a statement to the LA Times. But he said, quote, a second Trump presidency will undermine the very foundation of our democracy, which is code for Adam Schiff's power. And, quote, I have serious concerns about whether the president can defeat Donald Trump in November. It's the first true thing he said. in that litany of nonsense. But here's Adam Schiff calling for Joe Biden to, quote, pass the torch. It's time for him to go. Biden, in that BET interview, he acknowledged that that he did say at one point that he would only be a transition candidate, that he was only going to do this for one term. Wait until you hear his explanation as to why he's deciding to run again. He's like, I changed my mind. Why did you change your mind? What was the explanation for that? Was Hunter not rich enough? Is there too much criminal peril ahead for the Biden family? What is it specifically? I'll share that with you in a moment. We can all laugh. Remember, Joe Biden once said that he was just going to be a, quote, transitional candidate. He wasn't talking about Dr. Rachel Levine, although that is transitional. He's achieved that. Now, a transitional candidate, meaning he was just going to be here for a term. Hand off the reins to somebody younger. Somebody else can jump in the driver's seat. He'll teach them how to drive stick, and they'll take over from here. But he's not really good at anything. And he wants to stick around. He told BET this week, I need to stick around. Why do you need to stick around, Joe? What's the explanation for that? Take a listen to his answer.
I originally ran, you may remember it, I said I was going to be a transitional candidate. And I thought that I'd be able to move from this to pass it on to someone else. But I didn't anticipate things getting so divided. And quite frankly, I think the only thing age brings is a little bit of wisdom. And I think I've demonstrated that I know how to get things done.
He said, because things have gotten worse, that now he needs to run again? No, I think you've done enough. Things have gotten so divided. Yeah, because of you. You may be missing the detail here. You're the problem. Let's get rid of you. That's why I got to run again. Coming up, Margot Cleveland from the Federalist will join us as Joe Biden is now taking if you can believe it, a hard left turn to salvage his completely failing presidency. Good afternoon to you. It is now 4:35 News Talk, 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, top of the hour, we'll talk to Tony Schaefer, Lieutenant Colonel from the London Center for Policy Research. We've got a lot to discuss with him about this Secret Service blunder allowing Donald Trump to be shot on Saturday. Tony Schaefer will talk to us about all of the developments there. And you can talk to us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. There's clearly a movement afoot, no doubt led by Nancy Pelosi and the other elders of her party, to eject Joe Biden right now. Biden has very low approval ratings, historically low. And in fact, the AP reports today that almost every single person who votes for Democrats would like to eject him. So that might explain why Joe Biden has announced a number of very hard left turns in the days that behind us and ahead of us, for that matter. Where it's reported now that Biden is expected to endorse very drastic changes to the United States Supreme Court. For more on that subject, I want to bring in Margot Cleveland now, senior legal correspondent for the Federalist, and she's got all the details. Margot, good to talk to you today.
Oh, thanks so much.
So how does Biden want to change the United States Supreme Court? What isn't working at the court that he needs to fix?
What isn't working is that they're not doing enough to save him, to keep him and get him reelected. Oh. But it's just his latest ploy, as you noted, that he is trying desperately to find something that can resuscitate his campaign. So he's talking about he's talking about adding what he calls enforceable ethics code, as well as limiting the time that justices can serve as a Supreme Court justice, neither of which would be constitutional, even if he could somehow cram it through Congress or come up with some executive order.
So he can't just, by the snap of his fingers, obviously, although that's never stopped him before, or even with Congress's help, impose these restrictions on the Supreme Court. This would have to be a constitutional amendment?
It would. And if you look at the Constitution, Article 3 that established the Supreme Court and the inferior courts, as Congress may establish, what it did is it gave the judges and justices a lifetime appointment. They are entitled to hold those positions for good behavior, which means you can't kick them out because they've been there 10 years or more, or because you don't like what they did. And the only ethical, enforceable ethics code you have is right there, which is by impeachment.
Right.
So neither one of those would work. And he knows it. His handlers know it, but he's convinced that the American public doesn't know it. And he thinks that this is a way to pivot and try to present the Supreme Court as being extreme when it's not.
Right. Yeah, it's been anything but, hasn't it? It's, in fact, there are any number of decisions that conservatives have really not been so pleased with in this court, although there have been a number of very good decisions that restored the power to the people this term, that took away power that the federal government had simply assumed unto itself unconstitutionally. A lot of good corrective decisions coming out of this court. But if any reasonable legal observer is staring at these court decisions, they're not concluding that it's super right-wing or anything like that.
Right, and even the opinions, as you noted, that the conservatives are happy with, it doesn't do anything such as what Roe v. Wade did, which is override the will of the people. All it does is reestablish it to the political branches and require the legislative branch to actually make the law as opposed to judges. So, as you know, this isn't an extreme Supreme Court, but it's a way for Biden to try to portray it as being extreme, because that really is all he has. He doesn't have a record to run on. And the other part, you just look at the ethical rules that he's claiming, or that the left has been trying to claim there's some sort of violation with either Justice Thomas or Justice Alito. I think that when we spoke before, I mentioned I used to do deep dives on ethical questions on the judicial codes of conduct, because I worked for a federal appellate judge for 25 years. He was on the Judicial Codes of Conduct Committee. Nothing that they claim was a violation at the lower levels was a violation. It's just ridiculous that they're doing it. But they are trying to create an issue because they think this will work with the public.
Right. They want to demonize decent men on the Supreme Court. And it's quite unfortunate, because what it's actually led to is any number of Americans who are inclined to vote for Democrats. They've bought into this hook, line, and sinker. Like they really think that Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Sam Alito, two of the most decent men in our entire government, are actually the bad guys.
Absolutely. And I have a prediction for you. I predict the Democrats are going to be attacking Kavanaugh and Roberts and demanding that they recuse from anything that the Trump-Vance ticket tries to challenge from an election, because Vance's wife had at one time clerked for those judges/justices. So that's my prediction, that is going to be one of the things that they try to do, is demand that they recuse from any election issues.
By that standard, though, it'd be like we're getting to the point that if you were nominated by a president of a particular party, you need to recuse yourself. That's how close we're getting to that, if that's actually going to be the standard.
Right, and that's what I was just going to say. Again, going back to the years that I did this, that even when it is a former employee and it's someone who's arguing a case or a party, they only have to recuse for, a few years. But you're talking about a former employee from a decade ago who's a spouse of someone. There's no requirement for a recusal. But I guarantee you that if you have a Trump-Vance case, that is what they're going to do. They're going to be talking about, because you're already seeing them portray Vance as somehow shady because his wife worked for Justice Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh when he was a lower court judge,
right.
which is ridiculous. If anything, it shows how Vance is not some right-wing misogynist who thinks the woman has to be in the kitchen. He's got a really smart wife. And we shouldn't even begin to pretend that the left is following any sort of reasonable standard here. They don't have a principle by which everything we can understand what they mean. I mean, look at what they did with Hunter Biden. Every time a question went to the White House about how Hunter Biden was using Joe to enrich himself, the White House would say, well, we don't answer for Hunter. You can talk to his representatives. That's his personal business. This is completely separate from us, even though, of course, it's deeply intertwined. Meanwhile, you get Justice Alito's wife decides which flag she wants to fly outside of her beach house, and it's an international scandal that should require the justice to recuse himself from every case that the left is interested in. Absolutely. But I have to disagree, Vince. There is a unifying principle. It's power. That's what they care about. And every decision and every position they take, it is their power, not the power of the people, not the power of the voters. It's their power and keeping it. And that is why they hate Trump so much. Right. Yeah. And of course, that principle is not one that allows the other team to ever win. It's an I win, you lose construction. Exactly. And that's the only way it ever works. So if the right is stupid enough to keep playing the game where we say, okay, well, tell us what the standards are. We'll try and live up to them. Good luck. You're going to lose every time. Right, and you saw that just recently with the turn down the rhetoric. Not since Trump's shooting, there has been nothing that Trump or Vance said that you could in any way, shape, or form portray as extreme. While what has Biden done? He's continued with lying about Trump, and he's continued to use this threat to democracy. And they've continued to push they're against unity. What does that mean? It means that they won't bow to what we want. Sure. So, as you said, it's a heads I win, tails you lose, and Republicans aren't playing with it anymore. So, and have you noticed that they don't actually have any material on which to rely as they make the claim that it's actually the right that's violent? They have to claw for things like Charlottesville, the Charlottesville hoax. Biden once again spread this week. The bloodbath hoax they once again spread this week. They make up things to try and claim that the right is the source of all sorts of violence. Meanwhile, they don't talk about the shooting of Steve Scalise and the attack on the baseball field by a Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer. They don't mention that. They don't mention the attempted assassination of Justice Brett Kavanaugh after the left whipped their base into a frenzy about the status of a pending Supreme Court decision that they leaked in order to try and compel the outcome in. And they don't talk with any severity about the very rhetoric that they've been using that very much looks like it led up to the attempted assassination and definitely the successful shooting of President Donald Trump. Nor do they talk about the summer of rage when you had violence in response to George Floyd's death. So there is no comparison between the two. Yeah. And the attacks on Senator Rand Paul, by the way, multiple attacks on Senator Rand Paul. Absolutely. And the way you know that where the real problem is coming from is there wasn't riots after Trump was shot. There wasn't. But I guarantee you, if we have a Trump victory in November, and it's looking like that's going to be the case, that's where you're going to see the wave of violence. And it's unfortunate, but there are anarchists out there, and unfortunately the Democrats have no problem with that. They have no problem with letting law and order, stick to the side as long as it is people who are on their side, who will vote Democratic. So it's so deeply unfortunate. Do you have any cause for optimism amidst all of this? One, of course, it is so encouraging, first of all, to see the President Trump's response to being shot. He stands up, he rallies the crowd, he brings calm to a crowd that very much could have turned panicked and run. Instead, they were encouraged by his reaction as he stands up and lets them know he's okay. Absolutely. And certainly the poll numbers clearly indicate that this is all headed in Trump's direction if we have a free and fair election. Is there cause for hope for you? I think that there is, and I want to say another cause for hope was that Nikki Haley came and gave, I think, a very solid speech last night. And I know that there are a lot that want to trash her, but what she did is she didn't focus on the disagreements, and she didn't pander. She made clear that, look, we have disagreements, but we agree more. And she made that pitch to the middle Americans where there are a lot of people who disagree on different things. So I see that as a very promising sign that maybe the people on the right who do not agree with Trump can recognize that calling Trump evil is a bad thing. And for Trump to have reached out and asked her to speak in the name of unity and for her to have accepted it, to me, that was promising. You can criticize her policies all you want, but I think those on the right should focus on that and not do and resort to the name calling. So, but again, I'm also coming from the Ronald Reagan 11th Commandment perspective. So I cut my teeth on Ronald Reagan, and I think that our side needs to be a little bit more authentic about the reality that not everybody agrees with everything that we think.
And it is another unique feature. It definitely is another unique feature of Donald Trump and his time as a politician, that he is willing to open his arms back up, including to some of his most strident enemies in politics. It's not like the two of them are like Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy or anything. This is a very different relationship. Thank you very much. Margot Cleveland, nice to talk to you as always.
Oh, you too. Take care, Vince.
It's Margot Cleveland over at the Federalist. Yeah, the two. McCarthy. Do I have that audio? Did you pull that audio from me, Cory, at all? Or did I, the McCarthy Gaetz audio? I don't know. I don't even know if there's cursing in it. The two of them were like having it out on the floor yesterday. Really, actually, it was kind of one directional. Gaetz was just screaming at McCarthy, "Hey, when's your speaking time? When are you going to speak? You don't want to go up there because everyone's going to boo you." He's saying. McCarthy is doing an interview with CNN. It turns out the two men don't like each other for some reason. It's 4:49 now. WMAL. Traffic and weather. Okay, coming up, we'll have Tony Schaefer joining us. We're just getting brand new information now. The Biden administration has briefed a number of United States senators today on what they can share, I guess, about how Donald Trump ended up getting shot on Saturday. At Punchbowl News, reporter Andrew Desiderio tweeting the following. Senate briefing on Trump rally shooting just concluded. Top lines per two senators on the call. 1, the shooter visited the rally site a few days in advance to scope it out. Okay, so now this guy's been doing intel on this location a bunch of times. So a few days in advance, he's there to scope it out. We also know that he was there at least 3 hours before Trump began speaking, before the shots rang out. He walked through the magnetometers. He had a rangefinder on him. We now find out law enforcement took multiple photos of him. People saw him wandering around like a weirdo at the perimeter of the rally as the rally was about to kick off, and they were taking videos of him. They were so suspicious of him. There were red flags popping up everywhere during all of this. The claim also that he went and picked up a ladder at Home Depot, a 5-foot ladder, but law enforcement now saying there's no evidence he actually used the ladder to mount the building, that he climbed on top of an air conditioner to get up. Perhaps he concluded, having surveyed the site so many times, that he didn't actually need his 5-foot ladder to climb it. They also claimed that there was no 5-foot ladder there when they were closing down the scene, handling the scene after he was shot dead. Okay, 62 minutes elapsed between the time that the shooter was photographed as being suspicious and when he fired the shots. 62 minutes. 20 minutes elapsed between the time he was spotted by snipers and when he fired the shots. 20 full minutes transpired. And then finally, FBI Director Wray said there's no known foreign nexus, but no established motive as of now. Shooter used encrypted comms. That's new information. Had used encrypted comms and had little to no social media presence. This whole story is crazy. But 20 minutes elapsed between the time he was caught by the snipers, spotted, and then when he fired the shots. 20 minutes. So what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you just in practical terms. President Trump started speaking at 6:05. 6:05. And he was shot at 6:11, 6 minutes later. So if he was shot 6 minutes later, that means the 14 minutes prior to him beginning to speak was all time that the snipers were staring at this guy. 14 full minutes before Trump begins speaking, they're staring at this guy. And that means they had more than enough time to pull Trump off the stage, even if they didn't know that this guy had a gun. If he's so suspicious that snipers are spending all of their time focusing on him for 14 full minutes before the beginning of Trump's speech, don't let him on the stage. Tell him, sir, we've got a meaningful security problem. We've got a security problem. We don't know who this guy is. We're suspicious of him. Just give us a couple extra minutes. We got to get over to him. We're going to talk to him. We're going to sort it out. You can be on the stage in 2 or 3 minutes. We just need to get our hands on this guy first. And nothing. The guy was able to climb the building, shoot the president, and now we're getting these types of answers. All right. More ahead. Tony Shaffer has been watching all of this really closely. We'll get his thoughts. He's a CIA-trained former senior intelligence officer. We'll ask him what he thinks happened here. That's all ahead.